Hello, my name is Nawana McHan, and I am presenting with Jennifer Ball, and we are presenting on student financial aid this week, and we've split this into two parts, and Jennifer's going to start us off with part one.
Okay, the first part is just going to be more some dates of when things started with financial aid history. 1643, the first scholarship was awarded, and that was at Harvard. In 1944, the GI Bill passed, and in 1958, the National Defense Education Act created the National Defense Student Loan Program. This was more for areas in math and science. That's what it was originally started for. And then in 1964, the Economic Opportunity Act was created. And 1965, that is when Title IV assistance started. If you don't know what Title IV is, that is going to be any kind of federal funds, whether it be Federal Work Study or Supplemental Education Opportunity Act. We think of that as FSEOG. And then in 1972, the National Direct Loan Program was created. This later became Federal Perkins Loan Program. And this same year is when the Pell Grant and State Student Incentive Grant were created. In 1978, Middle Income Student Assistance Act removed the family income for guaranteed student loan programs. And then in 1980, Parent Plus loans were created. And in 1992, the FAFSA was created. And along with this came the Federal Unsubsidized Stafford Loan Program and the William D. Ford Federal Direct Loan Program. As most of you know, the FAFSA, that goes off of, that applies you for HOPE and Pell. Pell is going to be the federal funding part that is based on income. And then HOPE, that is part of Georgia, dependent on what you graduate with, your GPA, or even for HOPE grant, that can be for residency in Georgia. Now, for institutions to be eligible to award these funds, the school must meet the U.S. Department of Eligibility criteria to do the Title IV or federal funds or federal student assistance programs. For U.S. DOG eligibility, you must be a state authorized post-secondary institution. You must be nationally accredited, and you can only admit prospective students with a high school diploma or equivalent. So this also would be for VA funds. I know that for Constitution Day, if you are awarding VA funds, you have to participate in this. Any kind of thing that they deem is tied to federal funding, you have to participate, or they can pull your funding. Some of the accrediting associations approved by the U.S. Department of Education are the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, New England Association of Schools and Colleges, North Central Association of Colleges and Schools, Northwest Association of Colleges and Schools. We most know this as SACS, that is going to be Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and New York Board of Regents. I like to think of it like this, like the school that I work at is West Georgia Tech. SACS is going to be our regional accreditor, and then some of the department that gives us the degree granting authority. So like for most schools like Valdosta, that is going to be a University System of Georgia school, they are SACS accredited, and then the University System of Georgia, that is going to be the granting authority to grant degrees. For students to remain eligible for Title IV assistance, you must be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. You must be enrolled in coursework leading towards degrees or certificates, and you cannot be in default of any federal student aid loan, and you must not owe repayment or a federal student aid grant funds. And any male that is between 18 and 25 must have registered for selective service. If you do not register for selective service, you are not eligible to receive any federal funding. And then some of the student financial assistance program funding sources. It's going to be the direct loan programs. It can be federal direct subsidized loan programs, federal direct unsubsidized loan programs, and then federal direct plus program. The difference in the subsidized and the unsubsidized, if you are take out a subsidized loan, the government actually pays the interest while you are still in school. It's not accruing interest. And the unsubsidized, that's just going to be, you are going to be accruing that interest and are responsible for paying that back. Some of the grant programs is going to be federal Pell Grants, and that's going to be based on income. When you complete your FAFSA, students, unless you have to count your parents when you complete the FAFSA, unless you were a ward of the court, you are married, or if you have a child. If you have a child and you're not married, you can be independent. But if not, until you are, it's either 25 or 26 that you have to claim your parents on there and use their income. So Pell is based on income. And then when you complete this, you're going to have it, the EFC, whatever your EFC is, that is your expected family contribution. And that is going to determine if you receive Pell funds or not. FSEOG is also a grant program, and grant programs are something you don't have to pay back. Grant, you're basically given that, and you don't have to pay it back like a loan. So the FSEOG is going to be Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. And then there's also TEACH grants. That is Teacher Education Assistance for college and higher education. And then there is also Iraq and Afghanistan service grants. So that is going to be more tied to like VA. If you actually served in the military, or if you were the child of someone, your parent can pass down their VA funds to you, and you can use that. And then the work programs, federal work study. If you receive Pell federal funds, you are automatically eligible for federal work study. But even if you are not eligible for federal work study, you can be entitled to these funds. Each school year, the school comes up with an amount. It's like an estimated out-of-pocket cost, the money that you would need. So depending on the financial aid that you're eligible for, if you had any funds or any charges that would be higher than what you're receiving funds, you can participate in federal work study. And students can complete, or they can work 20 hours a week, and that is going to be federal funds is paying you to work at an institution.
All right. Okay, so I'll start with my part. I'm actually going to share with you guys how student financial aid actually works in terms of where does the money come from, who manages it, and how the system has changed over time. As we all know, financial aid is how millions of students can afford a higher education. It's important to understand that financial aid is not just about free money. It's actually a more complex system that involves the federal government, state governments, and then the individual institutions. Also, a financial aid office carries a lot of weight in the sense that they play a huge role in managing funds ethically, legally, and fairly. All 50 states offer some form of financial aid. We'll talk about the different types of financial aid. There's two. We have state and institutional. State aid often comes from tax revenues or tuition set aside, and some states actually even require a percentage of a tuition to go towards student grants. And then, of course, there's institutional aid. that comes from the college itself, and these are often through scholarships, tuition discounts, or donor funds. Aid can actually be need-based and merit-based, and even both at the same time. Private donors usually specialize in awards, and I have some experience with this where I'm at. So a donor can actually set up a foundation that will be funds that will go towards a scholarship to a student in need, but a lot of times there's specific goals and interests that we have to make sure we are lining up with the donor's intent. So they can kind of be hard to use or restrictive, but they're available. Next, we'll talk about the actual process of administering student financial assistance. It's important to know that it's the financial aid office's job to serve students, the school and government agencies all at the same time. And they have to make sure that the aid is awarded fairly, legally, and transparently. So who does financial aid report to? Well, they have two guiding organizations. The first one is the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. Acronym is the NASFAA. And then, of course, the one we're all familiar with by now, CAS, the Council for Advancement of Standards. NASFAA sets the national standards and the ethical guidelines, and then CAS will set the standards for how financial aid offices are structured and managed. The NASFAA created the core ethical principles that financial aid professionals have to follow. These principles are actually called the State of Ethical Principles, and there's a total of 6, and they say that financial aid professionals shall advocate for students, act with integrity, support students' access and success, comply with federal and state laws, be transparent and fair, protect student privacy. So really, financial aid professionals, they're not just managing money, they're actually advocating for students to help make higher education accessible. So how do they determine how much financial help is really needed by a student? Of course, this is case by case, but they actually have to follow a formula that's called the need analysis. And the formula is you take the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution, which this is the information that's pulled from FAFSA, minus any other aid. We might have some other scholarships or something, and that equals the unmet need, aka the financial aid that is needed. There are times that students may be in a unique circumstance, and it is the financial aid officer's duty to use their professional judgment to make the call or make an exception. Roles and responsibilities of financial aid professionals. What do they do day to day? Well, they monitor compliance with federal and state rules. They manage grants, loans, campus-based programs. They counsel students on budgeting and borrowing. They coordinate with departments like admissions, registrar, business office, etc. And they act as a bridge between school, government, and outside funding agencies. So really, they're like part counselor, part accountant, part policy expert. As far as structure and staffing, there's really no single structure for a financial aid office, meaning that they may report to student affairs, enrollment management. It's really up to the institution how they determine they wanted to structure or their financial aid office or department. Now, CAS does manage the financial aid office's guidelines to follow, and which are they have to be up-to-date policies, clear procedures, and proper staffing levels and staff training. And most importantly, as we all know, financial aid staff must follow the FERPA laws that protects the student's personal and financial information. as far as technology and online resources related to financial aid, as with everything, technology has completely changed the financial aid process. For example, FAFSA, I know from back in my day, it would take hours to fill this out. Now it takes minutes. There's also the National Student Loan Data System. Acronym for that one is the NSLDS, and that helps track every federal loan and grant. And of course, there's always a challenge when it comes to technology, because while it's made everything faster and more efficient, it's also made it less personal for students. I'm going to give you guys just some key websites. There's a lot of them, and I'll make sure they get put in the infographic, so hang in there. So the key government website is of course, the U.S. Department of Education.gov. This is the main source for policy and regulations really across the board. There's also the National Center for Education Statistics that provides national educational stats. There's some other websites that are not government related. Of course, the one we've been talking about, the NASFAA. This is the biggest professional organization for financial aid administrators. There's also the National Association of State Grant and Aid Program, and they focus on state-funded aid. There's also the National Council on Higher Education Resources. This advocates for college affordability and loan services. There's also a College Board website, and it provides tools for like the SAT, AP exams, and there's a profile financial aid form available there too. A couple of student resources. The finaid.org is a newer one. It's gotten a lot of good reviews. It basically explains financial aid in plain language, layman terms, so it's very helpful for students. And then there's fastweb.com. This matches students with scholarships. And then professional development in financial aid. Again, we've went over the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. This organization offers ongoing training, publications, and conferences. They also provide professional development and training to its members, and they offer 3 different types of memberships. The first one is institutional membership. The second one is an associate membership, and then there's a retirees group. In addition, there are regional associations, so Eastern, Midwest, Rocky Mountain, Southern, Southwest, and Western, and these all provide local workshops near you and provide peer support. The field values continuous learning because, as we all know, laws and policies are changing constantly. And then current issues and trends, of course, I mean, number one is rising cost. At about 4.9% per year from the year 2000 to 2010, tuition rose faster than inflation. It continues to rise. The gap between income and tuition keeps widening, especially for low and middle income families. College is becoming harder to afford without financial aid. There's changes to aid programs, federal programs like the Perkins Loan and the FCEOG. They've been scaled back. Couple of FAFSA and the Higher Education Act, they're being simplified and modernized, so that's a good thing. And then, of course, the post 9/11 impact. So after that event, aid expanded to those victims, their families, active duty military, and veterans. The post 9/11 GI Bill and Yellow Ribbon Program covers tuition and housing for qualifying service members. And the Iraq and Afghanistan grant program helps those students whose parents or guardian died in military service. So really, in conclusion, for financial aid, and Jennifer will agree that at the end of the day, more students more than ever are dependent on financial aid, and financial aid is truly about access. It's making sure students can afford the opportunity to learn. I think if you take anything away, it's when you think about financial aid, you don't just think about money, but rather think of the opportunity. Every grant, every scholarship, and every conversation in a financial aid office is really just a step toward making higher education attainable to all. And I think that's it.